My parents forced me to give a recommendation to my toxic former roommate. When I refused, my dad snorted, "You're just jealous she's doing better." 7 days later, my car was vandalized, and someone emailed my boss a list of complaints. I just smiled because she had no idea I had photos from that Vegas night. I had always been close with my parents growing up. They weren't perfect, but they were my family, and I figured we'd always have each other's backs. But somewhere along the line, I stopped feeling like I could be honest with them about the things that mattered. I suppose that's how family relationships shift as we get older. They had their expectations, and I had my life, which seemed to increasingly disappoint them. It all started back when I was living in a small apartment with Sarah, my former roommate. At first, everything seemed fine. Sarah was fun, charming, and outgoing. She made friends easily, always had some event or hangout planned, and, like me, was trying to make it in the city. We bonded over our shared experience of navigating adulthood, and for a while, I thought I had found a real friend. But that illusion didn't last long. Sarah had this way of being incredibly sweet when it suited her, but that sweetness always came with strings attached. Slowly, the cracks began to show. She would borrow things from me without asking, cancel plans last minute without remorse, and never offer anything in return. But the worst part was how she used her emotional manipulations. She always played the victim, made everything about her, and when things didn't go her way, she'd turn cold and distant. The breaking point came when she lied to me about a situation involving money. I had lent her a significant amount to cover an emergency, and when I asked for it back, she acted as though I was the one in the wrong. She ignored my texts for days, and when she finally responded, she accused me of being selfish for even bringing it up. I was furious. It wasn't about the money anymore, it was the principle. I tried to talk to her, but she shut me down, pretending like I was the one causing drama. After that, I moved out as quickly as I could. That was 2 years ago, and yet, my parents never seemed to see Sarah for who she truly was. They always defended her, saying she was just young and figuring things out. They never took the time to hear my side, so I stopped bringing her up in conversation. Then, a few weeks ago, I got a call from my mom. "Olivia, your father and I were just talking," she said, her tone unusually casual. "Sarah asked if we could reach out to you for a recommendation." I felt my stomach drop. A recommendation? For what? For a job. "She's applying for something pretty important, and she thinks you could help her," Mom explained, almost too nonchalantly. I was silent for a moment. "I don't think I can do that, Mom." "She really needs it, Olivia," she urged, her voice growing more persistent. "You know, she's doing well now. She's really trying to get her life together, and this could be the opportunity she needs." "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "she's done a lot of things to hurt me. She didn't even apologize for the way she treated me. I can't just forget that." There was a pause. I could practically hear my mom thinking it over. "You're just being stubborn. Don't you want to help someone who's trying to make a change? You're just upset because she's doing better than you. That's all." I winced at my dad's voice in the background. My father had never fully understood the fallout between Sarah and me. To him, it was just a matter of me overreacting. And his comment hit me like a ton of bricks. It wasn't about jealousy. It was about principle. "I'm not jealous," I said quietly, though the words felt hollow in my own ears. "I just can't do it." After a brief silence, my mom sighed, her voice soft. "Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, Olivia. But we thought you'd want to help." I hung up feeling worse than before. It wasn't the rejection itself, it was the way they couldn't understand. They still saw Sarah as some poor girl who made mistakes, and I couldn't figure out how to make them see the truth. That, in a way, was more painful than anything else. The next few days were a blur. I tried to focus on work and the small bits of happiness I had carved out for myself since moving away from Sarah. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had made the wrong call. Was I being petty? Was I letting my pride get in the way of something that could help her? But then I would remember the lies, the manipulation, and the feeling of betrayal, and I knew I had made the right choice. 7 days after the call with my parents, I stepped outside one morning to head to work. The air was crisp, and the world outside seemed normal. That is, until I saw my car. I froze in place. Someone had keyed the entire side of it. The scratches were deep, long lines that almost seemed deliberate. It wasn't just a random act of vandalism, it was personal. My mind immediately went to Sarah, even though there was no concrete evidence yet. I took a few shaky steps forward, trying to process what had happened, but my breath caught when I saw the rest of the damage. My front tire had been slashed. A sickening feeling washed over me as I fumbled for my phone to call the police. As I took a few pictures of the damage, I noticed an email notification from work. The subject line read, "Concerns regarding Olivia Monroe." Confused, I opened the email, and what I read made my heart stop. It was a long list of fake complaints about me, accusations of poor performance, unprofessional behavior, and even claims that I had been rude to clients. The email was signed anonymously, but the level of detail felt disturbingly familiar. I recognized the pattern. This was Sarah's doing. I had no idea how she managed to get my work email, but there was no mistaking it. The complaints were written in a way that only someone who had spent a lot of time observing me could know. She had been watching, planning, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And it wasn't just a coincidence that this email came right after I turned down her request for a recommendation. But as angry as I was, a strange calmness washed over me. I had something she didn't know about. Something that could shut her down once and for all. A few months ago, I had gone to a work conference in Las Vegas. It had been a whirlwind of events, but one night stood out, a night I hadn't thought about in a while. I had been drinking heavily, and somewhere along the way, I'd made a terrible decision. I took photos of Sarah in a compromising situation with one of the conference sponsors. At the time, I'd thought I might delete them, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed to keep them. Not because I wanted to use them, but because Sarah had a way of destroying people, and I wasn't going to let her do that to me. I sat there, staring at my phone, as a cold smile tugged at my lips. Sarah thought she could get away with everything. She thought I was weak, that I would just roll over and let her ruin my life again. But she had no idea what I was capable of. I wasn't going to play her game. I was going to win this time. I got to work that day, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what Sarah had planned next, but I knew one thing for sure: this was far from over. The days following the vandalism and the email were filled with a mix of frustration and determination. I could feel the tension in the pit of my stomach every time I checked my phone. Every new notification, every phone call, left me expecting more fallout from Sarah's little campaign. But, thankfully, nothing came, at least not directly. It was as if she was waiting, watching for the right moment to strike again. Meanwhile, work had been a blur. My boss, a man who had always been fair but knew nothing of my personal life, called me into his office to discuss the email. The complaint about my supposed tardiness and uncooperative behavior was all the more baffling when I had a pretty solid record of punctuality and positive feedback from clients. He seemed to buy my side of the story, mostly because, honestly, there was no real substance to Sarah's allegations. They were vague, contrived, and entirely false. "Olivia, we take this sort of thing seriously, but after reviewing your work and speaking with your colleagues, it seems like this was just some misunderstanding," he said, his tone businesslike but not accusatory. "I trust this won't be a recurring issue, right?" I nodded, relieved that he hadn't made a bigger deal out of it. In fact, I could see the skepticism in his eyes when he read the complaints. It was clear to both of us that whoever wrote them didn't really know me, and that made it easier for me to get through the conversation without causing too much attention. But I couldn't ignore what was happening outside of work. My car was still damaged, and while I had filed a police report, I knew the chances of any real investigation were slim. It was mostly a formality, something to cover my tracks for insurance purposes. Deep down, I knew there was no real justice coming for that particular mess. Still, I couldn't help but feel a cold sense of satisfaction. It wasn't that I wanted to get back at Sarah right away, it was more about knowing that I held the upper hand now. I had something that could shut her down permanently. And I wasn't about to let it slip through my fingers. Later that evening, after a long day at work, I sat at my kitchen table, looking at my phone in a mix of frustration and resolve. It had been a week since I found out about Sarah's little sabotage. I hadn't heard a peep from her. No texts, no calls, no sudden apologies. Nothing. But I knew she was out there, planning something. She always was. I ran my fingers across the edges of my phone, debating whether to just send her a message, confront her directly, or wait. I knew deep down that confronting her might not lead to the closure I was hoping for. It could very well make things worse. Sarah wasn't someone who would just apologize or back down. She would deny, deflect, and spin things in a way that made me look like the villain. She was a master at it. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't just about revenge or retaliation. It was about stopping her once and for all. I wasn't going to let her drag me into her mess again. Not now, not ever. I opened my photo gallery and scrolled down to the pictures from that Vegas night. I had kept them all this time, not because I wanted to blackmail her, but because I knew one day I might need them. The pictures were blurry, taken in a moment of drunken chaos, but there was no mistaking what they depicted. Sarah was in a hotel room with someone, a man I didn't recognize, both of them in a compromising situation. It wasn't just about the physical act, but the fact that she was behaving in a way that was completely contradictory to the person she had pretended to be. To the sponsors and clients who thought of her as a professional, a hard-working young woman trying to make her mark, this would be a completely different story. I had taken those photos as a form of insurance. But now, they had become my lifeline. I spent the next hour carefully compiling my evidence. I didn't just want to use the photos, I wanted to gather everything. Text messages, receipts from the conference, even witnesses who had been at the event and could corroborate the timeline. Everything. I wasn't going to risk letting her slip away like she always did. Not this time. The next day, I sent an email to my colleague, Jeremy. He had been with me at the conference and had witnessed some of the things I'd experienced. We weren't close, but I knew he would be professional about it. He had no love for Sarah either, after she had tried to charm her way into getting free drinks at the bar by using his name. Jeremy, I wrote, I need your help. Remember the Vegas conference a few months ago? I've got a situation involving Sarah Jacobs. Long story short, I need you to verify a few things about her actions that night. Let me know if you're willing to help. It wasn't long before I got a reply. Of course, Olivia. What do you need from me? I smiled to myself. At least I wasn't alone in this. I spent the next few hours gathering all the evidence I could find, screenshots, photos, messages, anything that could prove Sarah's duplicity. I made sure to document everything carefully, not out of a desire for revenge, but because I wanted to be prepared. I needed to be sure that when the time came, I could make Sarah's life just as difficult as she had tried to make mine. By the time the weekend came around, I had everything in place. My plan was simple. I was going to confront Sarah, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of getting away with it. I had my evidence, and I was going to present it to her face. If she wanted to keep pushing, keep trying to tear down my life, I'd show her just how far I was willing to go. I waited for the right moment, and then I called her. My hands were steady, but my heart raced. I'd been thinking about this moment for weeks, and now it was here. The phone rang twice before she picked up, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Olivia, hey. How's everything going? I was just thinking about you the other day. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. Sarah, I know what you've been doing. There was a silence on the other end. She probably thought I was talking about the car, or the email, or whatever small thing she had thought she could get away with. But I wasn't talking about those things. I was talking about the real betrayal. You've been messing with my life, Sarah. The emails, the car. It's all you, isn't it? I didn't give her a chance to answer. And I know exactly what you did in Vegas. Don't think for a second I haven't kept track of everything. I heard her sharp intake of breath. What are you talking about? I smiled. Oh, you'll see soon enough. And with that, I ended the call. I sat there, heart racing, staring at the phone in my hand. The conversation had been short, but it felt like everything I had been holding on to for months was suddenly out in the open. I wasn't sure what Sarah thought in that moment, whether she was still in denial or whether she realized how close I was to bringing everything to light. Either way, I had the upper hand, and it felt good. I knew the next steps were crucial. I wasn't going to let her slip away with another excuse or fake apology. I spent the next few days preparing. I wasn't going to make the same mistakes I made in the past, letting Sarah manipulate the narrative, twisting everything to her advantage. I knew that for this to work, I had to be organized, calm, and clear. If I was going to expose her, I had to do it methodically, without emotion getting in the way. I gathered all the evidence I had collected over the past few weeks, the photos from Vegas, the texts we had exchanged in the past, the emails with the fabricated complaints, the police report for the vandalism. I even had a few witnesses who could corroborate parts of my story. Jeremy, my colleague from the conference, had come through with his testimony, confirming that he'd seen Sarah interacting inappropriately with the sponsor at the conference. The pieces were all in place. I felt a surge of confidence. Sarah had no idea what was coming for her. The confrontation came a few days later. I invited Sarah to meet me at a local cafe, a quiet place where we wouldn't be disturbed. I didn't want to give her the chance to back out or to make it look like I was ambushing her. I wanted her to feel like she was still in control, like this was just another friendly meeting. But I knew better. When Sarah walked in, she was dressed to the nines, her usual confident smirk on her face. She still had that air of self-assuredness that made her seem like she could charm the world. But today, I wasn't buying it. Olivia, she greeted me with fake enthusiasm, taking a seat across from me at the table. It's been a while, hasn't it? How are you? I could barely suppress a smile. It was the same act I had seen 100 times before. But this time I wasn't fooled. I'm doing well, I said, my tone cold but controlled. I've been thinking a lot about you, actually. Her eyes flickered for a moment. I could tell she was caught off guard by my response. Oh? Well, I've been thinking about you too, she said, leaning in slightly. I hope things are going well at work. You know, I was really hurt when you didn't help me out with that recommendation. I thought we were past all of that. I'm not here to talk about that, I said, cutting her off. I'm here to talk about something else. Her smile faltered, but she quickly regained her composure. What's going on, Olivia? You're acting kind of weird. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out a few printed photos. I slid them across the table, watching as her eyes flickered down to them. They were the photos from Vegas, Sarah and the sponsor in a compromising position. I didn't need to say a word, the evidence was right there in front of her. She looked up at me, her face going pale. What the hell is this? These are just a few pictures I took from the conference, I said, my voice calm and steady. You see, Sarah, I've been keeping track of everything. The vandalism, the emails you sent to my boss, and the lies you've been spreading. I've had enough of it. Her facade cracked. She leaned back in her chair, visibly shaken. Olivia, listen, this isn't what you think it is. Those photos, I know what they are, I interrupted. I also know you've been sending fake complaints to my work, trying to ruin my reputation. And I know you're behind the vandalism of my car. You thought I wouldn't find out, didn't you? Sarah's eyes darted around the cafe, as though she was looking for an escape route. You can't prove any of that, she said, her voice trembling just slightly. Oh, but I can, I said, pulling out more documents. I've got witness statements, photos, and I've already contacted the police about the vandalism. I've also saved all of your emails. You've made a lot of mistakes, Sarah. And I'm not going to let you get away with it. There was a long pause as she processed what I was saying. Her usual bravado was gone, replaced with fear and uncertainty. For the first time, I saw her as she really was, vulnerable, scared, and completely caught off guard. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said, her voice quiet now, almost pleading. I was just trying to get ahead. I thought I could make it. I thought you'd help me like you used to. You never understood, did you? I said, leaning forward slightly. I'm not your stepping stone, Sarah. You can't use people to get what you want and expect no consequences. You've hurt me, you've tried to destroy my life, and for what? Because you couldn't handle the fact that things weren't going your way? She looked away, her face flushing with shame. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean it. I was just scared, and I thought if I made things worse for you, maybe I could make myself feel better. Your actions don't get a free pass just because you're scared, I replied firmly. You've done too much to me for me to just forgive you. And I won't let you destroy anyone else's life either. It's time to face the consequences. I stood up from the table, pulling my things together. I didn't want to linger or let her try to spin another tale. I had made my point. I had exposed her. But before I left, I looked at her one last time. You can try to run from the truth, but it always catches up with you. I'm done, Sarah. I walked out of the cafe, my heart still racing, but a sense of relief washing over me. It wasn't about making Sarah suffer. It was about standing up for myself, for putting an end to the cycle of manipulation and abuse she had woven around me. It felt good to finally take control of the situation. The next few weeks were quiet. Sarah didn't try to contact me again, and as far as I could tell, she didn't try anything else to sabotage my life. I had no idea what happened to her after our meeting, but I didn't care. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. As for me, life slowly returned to normal. My car was repaired, and I moved forward at work, with my reputation intact. The email complaints were dismissed, and with my boss's support, the whole ordeal was forgotten. Sarah was out of my life for good, and I had come out on top, stronger and more confident than I had ever been. Sometimes, life hands you a situation where you feel like the odds are stacked against you. But if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that standing up for yourself, even when it's difficult, is the only way to reclaim your peace.